a place that she used to love. And it wasn't just a little whining in the morning. She was genuinely very upset at the idea of going to school. Getting up was a struggle. She'd say, I don't want to go to school today. Getting dressed was a struggle, and let alone getting in the car. And so she is very strong-minded, and we realized early on there was just no point in pushing her. Instead, we wanted to support and understand her, of course. And so one day I asked her, Lovey, why you don't want to go to school anymore? Like you used to love it. And what she shared with me was something simple but profound. She said, Mama, it's boring. I keep doing the same thing over and over again. And then it hit me. What my daughter was experiencing is probably something we've all experienced at one point in our lives. If we're not challenged or engaged, we lose interest and we stop showing up. And that's especially true for our students, where over half of them struggle to remain interested in their classes. And so when we ask them what they're looking for, and as you probably expected, they're looking for current, relevant content that's applicable to the real world and promotes interaction. Basically, like student content. And so when we dig deeper into the data, we notice that over 80% of students find it very important for them or important for their schools to offer real company-led projects. And currently, as you can see on the slide, only 30% of schools offer that. This presents a huge opportunity for institutions to offer more company-led project courses that can benefit them, their students, and the community at large. And so today, I am very excited to be sharing with you what I've learned the past 2 years designing, launching, and refining a communications capstone course. But first, I have a question for you. What is one thing you're hoping to take away from this session? Think of this as your personalized learning outcome. This will help me make the session more relevant, but obviously, hopefully help you also get the most out of it. Feel free to scan the barcode you can see on the screen. I'm going to quickly pull up the Mentimeter so we can see the results live. Ideas, love it. Definitely, we'll have some ideas to share, and I'd love to hear your ideas as well. I'll give you a minute, and then I'll go back to the slides. Creativity, absolutely. Job recruitment, very important, especially in these types of courses. Engagement, absolutely. This is a great type of engagement. I love that all of you are being engaged in this activity today. New ideas to engage, absolutely. That's all we're going to talk about today, how we can make this experiential capstone course more engaging. I'll give it another few seconds, and then I'll turn it over to the slides. All right, I'm going to put the slides back just in the interest of time, but we will have another opportunity to engage on the Mentimeter poll later on as well. All right, I appreciate everyone's patience as I switch back and forth between the slides since Canva does not integrate with the Mentimeter. All right, so now that you've shared a little bit about what you're hoping to take away from this session, I'd like to make a confession. I struggled. I struggled actually a lot making this presentation. I've actually started over 3 months ago, working on it on and off, and like any creative project, it's all about inspiration. But one thing I struggled with is how do I communicate all this information I have in my head, all these stories and data points in a way that's hopefully engaging for you and then not overwhelming. And so today, what I've done is I've split up my presentation into 3 parts, all around the simplified ADDIE course development model. After each stage, I'm going to give you a chance to process, reflect, and perhaps think about how this may apply to your own course or project. So if this sounds good, you can give me a thumbs up. I'm not going to say it, but I'll count on it. And so the first stage of the course development process, as you probably know, is the research and analysis, which can easily become a rabbit hole. And so in this case, we're going to focus on three key pillars. The first one is the situation. Why do we need this course in the first place, and how does it fit with our existing courses or programs? The second part of this is about our learners, which I think is the most important part of the course design process. Who they are, what their journey looks like, how can this course best propel them in their jobs, in their careers? And obviously, no course design is with boundless time, budget. And so it's really important to look at our resources and limitations and what kind of support we could get to move this course forward. Now, when it comes to research, we often end up relying on secondary data because, let's face it, it's readily available and more affordable. And in this case, we could look at things like market research report regarding the labor market and what recruiters are looking for and employers. It's important to do consultations both internally and externally with industry experts, other educators, and talk to our students. And of course, we want to see what else is out there, both to learn from it, but also figure out a way to maybe position our course in a unique way. And so in our case, the situation was pretty simple. We knew anecdotally that our students, being mostly international, face tougher challenges, job prospects than their domestic peers. And around the time, interestingly enough, we were thinking about this course, there was a BC research that backed it up. This was also the topic of my conversations with the IABC in the context of how else can we support our students who are mostly non-native speakers through things like volunteering and mentorship. Ultimately, like any comms or marketing plan, you may come up with something like this, like an audience or learner analysis. Obviously, understanding their demographics is important, but I think equally, if not more important, is really looking at these psychographics, what their career interests are, what are their aspirations, and most importantly, what are some of their barriers, both to learning and also to reaching their career goals. For example, in our case, we know the key barriers our students faced were the lack of network and Canadian work experience. And so we want to make sure that we take that into consideration throughout our course design process. Talking to the students is very helpful, but sometimes we can find nuggets like these, which are like gold, and it helps us really understand our students' frustrations, what they're going through, their feelings. And so you will hear later on Christian speak in a video, but I want to read for you quickly one thing that he shared here. Often, I feel so frustrated as an immigrant who wants to be part of this community and put myself at work to build a better world. And by the way, fun fact, I just saw Christian at graduation where he actually graduated with a Medal of Excellence. So ultimately, we wanted this course to act as a bridge, helping students navigate the tough transition between school and the workplace. And so now that we're done with this stage, I want to give you a chance to reflect and process and maybe ask any quick questions. If not, we can leave them toward the end. So feel free to scan the barcode and I'm going to share my Mentimeter. So any quick thoughts, reflections, maybe how could this apply to your course or ideas that you may have? Feel free to scan the barcode and share them with us. How long is your course? Great question. I'm actually tackling that at the end of the presentation as a challenge, but our course is actually 12 weeks, so it's fairly condensed because we have 4 terms a year, which makes our term shorter than traditional courses. Great question. I'll wait maybe about 30 seconds, and then I'll move back to the presentation. I see some other questions. So how long did it take you to develop your course? Another great question. Just like this presentation, it was really on and off for over the course of several months. We also had to get through approvals internally with our university curriculum committee and our senate at the university. So it definitely took multiple iterations. But I would say from idea to launch, it was probably at least 8 months. And then everything after that was really about refining it. How do you evaluate success? I actually talk about that at the very end of the presentation, so hold that thought. Great question. Biggest challenges. Also, I do talk about this at the very end. One thing would be the timeline, but please hold that thought as well. How do you involve your community? These are amazing questions. Thank you so much, by the way. How do you involve your community in your course? That's another great question. And I'm a big believer. That would be, I guess, a whole other presentation on how I love to build engagement in my courses. But I think in this particular course, because it's very group-based, it really in itself becomes a small community. And the way it's delivered in hybrid mode, where we have 2 hours of class time and 2 hours of group work online, it kind of helps to build that close-knit community as well, both in class and online. So I would love to take some of these questions at the end of the presentation, just want to make sure I can go through the other 2 stages with you, and address some of these questions. But I'm going to switch back to the presentation. But again, I'm going to address some of these towards the end. And if I haven't, please feel free to ask them directly, as Rivers will be helping me get those, facilitate that at the end of the presentation. I'm loving how engaging all of you are. I can't see any of you, but I hope that I'll be able to see some of you later when you ask questions. All right, right now I'm just seeing a curtain. So but I know all of you are here because I can see your amazing ideas and questions. Okay. So, all right, so now that we're done with the research and analysis, we're going to move into stage 2, which is design and development. And if you've designed a course before, you know what this entails. It's about learning outcomes, CLOs, assessments, material, and in this particular case, it's about identifying what kind of clients and projects we would like to work on, or we want to work on ideally. But we also have to keep in mind revision of the course, which is really to act as a bridge to help students navigate the tough transition between school and the workplace, which is why we want to make sure all of these elements help to align with the vision, which is help students build job-ready skills, build a portfolio, build their personal brand, and last but not least, their industry network. And so when it came to the learning outcomes, we identified 4 key themes that we wanted to keep simple around what employers were looking for. So leadership and collaboration, advanced business communication skills, both in writing and oral, consulting skills, and then real-life applications. And then we did what we would do in any other course, which is match the assessments. We have 7 assessments to the course learning outcomes. But because this is also an important exit capstone course, we also match some of the assessment to the PLOs, which is the program learning outcomes as well. When it came to the material, of course, we wanted to make it experiential, but because of our students' financial situation, we wanted to make the material as accessible as possible to reduce financial barriers. We wanted to adopt more of a minimalist approach because, let's face it, we are overloaded with information, so we really wanted to not overwhelm them anymore. And because we wanted to deliver the course in different formats, we wanted to make sure the content was adaptable to hybrid, face-to-face, or online delivery. And so we ended up using a lot of case studies and OERs. A number of them come from the PRSA, the Public Relations Society of America. We also used OERs from a UK-based charity called the Health Foundation, and we relied a lot on in-class activities. And then we complemented that with what I called my Beyond the Classroom series, where I invite industry guest speakers, share their stories and experience with my students. One of the things I really wanted to have in the course, because students, most of them have never developed a communications plan, was to have a template to help students step by step develop a strategic communications plan in 10 weeks. And of course, I went down the rabbit hole looking at that up online. I even consulted with our library. And one of the things I stumbled on was communications toolkit by the Health Foundation, which is a UK-based charity. And I found it very useful, but I still wanted to make some changes to make it relevant to the course. Unfortunately, given their copyrights, as you can see on the slide, I could use it as is, but I couldn't change it. So I did what anyone would do. I emailed them. I said, hey, I would love to use your resource, but I would love to make some changes as well to make it more relevant to my course and my students. But then I didn't hear back for weeks, and I ended up deciding to create this resource. So I created a full-on strategic communications plan, which became a pivotal resource in the course that students use from day one until they're done. And it shows in the reflection reports when they share the feedback. And interestingly enough, right after I created this resource, which took weeks for me to do, I ended up hearing back from the Health Foundation saying, yes, you're welcome to use it. You're welcome to change it as long as you acknowledge us. Of course, it was already too late for me to do so, but of course, I still acknowledge them. And also our librarian that was very helpful in supporting me. So takeaway, if you can't find it, create it. I also ended up creating a lot of bite-sized content, again, not to overwhelm students. For example, in week 2, which is our kickoff meeting, I gave students sample questions that they can ask to the client. When it came to case studies, I really wanted to have case studies where students could draw parallels between the case study and their projects. And so, for example, one of our most popular case study was the Stick Around for Summer case study by the PRSA, which was a campaign on a shoestring budget. And as you can see in students' comment that should come up, sorry, 1 second. Just want to make sure there, okay. Sorry about that. As you can see in the student's reflection report comment, this was for her the biggest takeaway she had from the course. So I'm going to read for you a snippet that says, one example that stood out for me was a case study we did about the University of Georgia, where they use stickers as part of their communication strategy. It blew my mind how something as simple as a sticker could have such a big impact. And last but not least, when it came to project work, again, we wanted to work with relevant projects with purpose in mind. That meant obviously working with clients who value mentorship and empathy, who had an easy and quick onboarding process where we could access information and where their expectations as far as deliverables would be aligned with the course assessments. And so we ended up working with 2 different types of clients. The first one is actually university internal clients. So as you probably know, every department in the university needs a comm strategy, whether internal or external. So they really welcome the collaboration. It was easier to access information. But most importantly, students could work on projects that mattered to them and brought a lot of meaning. And they could learn a lot from that experience as well. The second type of project we worked on was the not-for-profit sector, because let's also face it, they are under-resourced, but also they can offer a low entry point for new immigrants and international students, as you can see on the slide. And so now that we determined the type of client we wanted to work on, we needed to develop an efficient and effective collaboration model that would be attractive to the clients. And this is what it looks like. So before the term, the client would fill up a client brief that I would provide them and provide any supporting documentation. And then week 2, we would have a kickoff meeting where students have a chance to ask any questions that may not be provided in the brief or they couldn't find independently. Week 6 is when students have a progress presentation, both to the client and an industry panel. Using that feedback, they work towards a final presentation. And last but not least, we have a final client handoff where students will hand off two things: the actual presentation, which is about 10 to 15 slides of a summary of the comms strategy, and then the actual strategic communications plan. So it's a PDF that has all the details on the strategy and the implementation as well. And again, that's typically done weeks 11, 12. So again, after this stage, it's about putting everything together and implementing it in your LMS. In our case, it was Brightspace, and that could be used by students and other instructors. So I know that I covered a lot in this section, so I'm gonna take a moment to breathe, but also want to give you a chance to process, reflect, and maybe if you have any other quick questions, then I'm happy to take them. If not, I can also take them at the end of the presentation. Thank you. I really love the inclusion of the PRC. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so appreciative of the support that the PRC lended us for this project. So shout out to the PRSA. How did you develop the cases yourself? So a lot of the cases that I'm using here are more PRSA based, but over the years, with my industry experience, I have developed other cases that I'm sharing on SlideShare and that I'm using in other courses. How did you gather and incorporate student feedback into future iterations of the course? That's an amazing question. I'm actually going to touch base on this in the last part of the presentation, but I would say briefly, it was a big part of it was getting feedback from them, talking to them, and their reflection reports was actually like a treasure to help me get a lot of feedback that helped me make this course better. How have you tracked post-graduation outcome skills students have helped? That's actually an excellent question. We track that. The university tracks that through our post-graduation survey, and then we would typically match that with what this instructor would also share, and then we would see, we'll look at some themes and commonalities. Maybe I'll take a quick last one. How do you incorporate networking and personal branding into the capstone? Excellent question. So I'm going to talk about it briefly in the last part of the presentation. And again, if you feel like this maybe didn't cover everything, I'm happy to answer it at the very end as well, just because I know we're a bit on a schedule and I don't want to stand in your way of your coffee break coming up. So if you'll give me a moment, I'm just going to share my slides again. And by the way, thank you so much for all of these amazing questions. We have a very lucky to have a very engaged audience today. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so now that we're done with the research and analysis, the design and development, it's time to have fun really with the course. Launch it out there, see what happens, and get the feedback to make it better. And so when we first launched this course was summer of 2024. It was a prototype. We only had 3 students, and each iteration, again, has been an opportunity to improve it and make it better. I'm happy to share also that the interest in the course has increased over time. We went from 3 students a year ago to now 22 students that I'm teaching, which in itself has special considerations when it comes to group work and client collaborations. What we found, the model that worked best for this course was a hybrid delivery model. So we meet for 2 hours a week in class. We work on case studies, activities. We have a mini lectures on some key topics. And then 2 hours a week, students will meet on teams. The groups will meet on teams, and they will work on their project, and they will share a structured report with me. They will tag me, and then they will also let me know if they have any questions, and then we can go back and forth, and I can help them until the next class. And so when we first launched this course in summer of 2024, We collaborated with Student Affairs and Services on a project to increase the usage of GuardMe, which is our student support app for students. As you probably know, students' mental health has worsened since the pandemic, and that's especially true for international students. And so this was a very meaningful project for students, and they came up with lots of creative ideas that they ended up sharing to the client and an industry panel. And so I'd like to give you a moment to read up on the client feedback here. And in fall of 2024, we collaborated with the library on a similar project. And I'm going to let Liz, our undergraduate librarian, tell you more.
I worked with students from Work 490 on a library and learning commons project. So that was with the goal of really just making it clear that both the library and the learning commons work together. We're one department and we have an interconnected set of support services. My experience working with the students was so great. It really was such an enjoyable time, the whole thing. It was kind of in the evenings, which is not usually my work time, but I found myself really looking forward to spending time with the students and joining the class. Did the deliverable meet my expectations? Absolutely. Well and truly exceeded them as well. They produced really polished work. They gave practical ideas that we could implement almost immediately, so really tangible solutions, but then also thought in like a bigger future planning perspective and gave some more substantial suggestions for kind of that long-term perspective as well, which was super helpful. And we have already started to implement some of these recommendations. We're doing a lot of the displays, and I think it's already starting to work. We're getting a bigger emphasis on the library and the learning commons together, and I think that's translating for our students, which is great.
I hope the sound was okay. It wasn't great on my side, but I hope you're able to hear that, and I would be happy to share that later on as well if needed. So in the winter of 2025, it was the first time when we collaborated with an external organization. So we worked with a not-for-profit called BGC, and we worked on two different projects. One was more of an always-on comm strategy to engage various stakeholders, and the other one was more of a specific Giving Tuesday campaign to increase donations. And currently, with my class of 22 students in the spring term, we're also working with a not-for-profit called Sanctum Care, and we're working with the CPRS Vancouver chapter, which is the Canadian Public Relations Society. So I guess that's a parallel to the PRSA. One of the challenges the CPRS Vancouver chapter has is how do we create more engagement with students? They've never run a targeted student campaign. So this was an excellent opportunity to collaborate since students are the target audience and they can come up with ideas that matter to them. I think there was a question earlier about this, and this is just one example of how this course helps students build their personal brand and network. So they're encouraged to share their journey and reflect. For example, their reflections on LinkedIn using the course hashtag UCW Work for Nanny. And this is also part of a graded course activity to further incentivize them. Now, when it comes to evaluation, and I think there was a question about this, great question. I am a big believer in holistic evaluation. Usually there's many data points, both formal and informal, we can draw from. Of course, the obvious one tends to be the student evaluations, but there's a lot more we can gather from clients, students, and instructors who may be teaching the course. So evaluations are helpful, yes, but sometimes, a lot of times, students won't leave a lot of feedback that can be meaningful for you to make the course better, or there's not enough themes that you can look for, especially if the sample is small. And so one thing that I found really helpful was the reflection report, as mentioned earlier. This is a last assessment that students do. It's a fairly structured assessment where students will answer specific question in relation to the course. For example, I'll ask them, who was your favorite guest speaker? And hands down, this was the best way for me to learn what students enjoyed, what they wanted to learn more of, and so on. For example, in this case, Noria was hands down the best guest speaker they enjoyed. And I would like to read for you quickly some of the feedback that this student left. So the student says, this is quoted directly from his reflection report. I found all the guest speakers in our class helpful. Perhaps the speaker that stuck in my mind was Noria Sefcovic. Her stories of living life as a student and immigrant to Canada relates to me in such a big way that it gave me some comfort knowing that I'm not alone. I also have another quick video that I'd like to share with you that has other students' reflections, some of their raw reflections. So hopefully the sound will be better. If not, maybe Rivers, you can let me know and I can play it in a different format.
I think for me, the course itself, I was really, really excited about the project. I was super excited. Having a course like this, design where we were actually dealing with a real life project that was it may be implemented, and some of the aspects of it will certainly be appreciated, somewhere. That was good to actually see things come together, and especially if you never had the experience before to do anything like that.
Work for 90, what I did really like is go back to work with a real life scenario, because in most of the other courses along UCW we work with case studies. When we're working with a real organization that has real problems and we cannot just solve it hypothetically with like go all in with social media, but it's like, no, we don't have money for social media. Well, where are you come up with? So I think that's one of it, like a great opportunity just for us to get like a dip in the water of what the industry is like, because they're not going to be case studies where we have a lot of budget or but everything's perfect. We're going to have to deal with so many like restraints, and they're going to be barriers for us.
As a capstone course, I didn't learn anything specific I hadn't learned in previous courses, but it helped me to put everything I learned in a unique perspective, pushed me to sharpen my mind and create a valuable product that would benefit this company. It was the closest experience to a real life professional setting and helping me settle a lot of prior knowledge in my mind. Presentation skills, research skills, creativity, writing skills, and the skill of listening to the struggles and expectations of an actual client. Everything was at stake when creating that project in this course.
So Christian, again, is the student who just graduated with a Medal of Excellence. So one of the, I think this relates to one of the questions that was asked earlier was, how do we refine it? So the biggest challenge I had in this course from an instructor and student perspective, as I alluded to earlier, is really the timeline, because the term is very short. We've got 12 weeks to make all of this happen. So you really hit the ground running. This takes a lot of prep on the instructor side, but also from a student standpoint. If they miss the first class, it can really set them back. So we're going to need a lot of support. The second challenge of this course, even though it's an exit capstone and students are expected to come in with some foundational knowledge of communication strategy, let's face it, they're all going to come at different levels and they may have different expectations. And so it's really fine-tuning that balance, that delicate balance between theory or concepts, case studies that are parallel to the project, and then the project work itself. And so I found that students like Christian, you heard in the video, he kind of knew everything already. So he just wanted to apply what he learned to the project. Well, I've had other students who maybe felt like they needed a deeper dive into some of the concepts, like be it messaging or evaluation. And so the way I've been handling this is by being transparent with the students and just giving them options. So at the beginning of the class, the 2-hour session, I'll say, here's some things we're going to cover today, and then they can pick what they want to do. So I'll have some groups just work by themselves independently and call me up when they need help, because they're like, we know what we're doing. We just want to use the class time to just work on this. And then I have some other students who want to do a case study or want to get a deeper dive into a concept. And it does take a lot of juggling on the instructor's part, especially if you have more than, let's say, 20 students. But I really find that this method helps to create a more personalized learning experience that not only increases engagement of the student, but also the quality of the output. And so if I were to summarize this whole presentation into 4 salient points, which is another challenge of mine, a challenge I had, I think the first one would be to adapt the ADDIE course development model, whatever development framework you may be using, to the unique needs of your learning experience. From all the research you do, anyone you talk to, I think the most important part is really understanding the students, putting ourselves in their shoes, understanding their journey, their challenges, and how this course can best help them moving forward to land a job and start their careers. I'm a big believer in building relationships and leveraging existing relationships. So looking at ways to build triple win partnership that can benefit your institution, but also industry, community, and the students. And again, big believer also in evaluation. So like anything else, we want to evaluate using the tools and data points we have, and keep working on continually improving this. And of course, I also like documenting things, because you never know when you can use this to use it as a discussion and to help others as well. And so just quickly to close the loop about my daughter, because I started the story about her. So we actually ended up taking her off daycare for 2 months. It was a bit rough for us as working parents. So we started doing new activities, and we worked on the reintegration plan with her teachers. And I'm happy to share that she's finally back and happy in her school. It's definitely something we don't take for granted as working parents, but again, sometimes you just need a fresh perspective. I also wanted to quickly acknowledge some of the people who have been a big part of this course. It would take a whole other presentation to thank them, but I would like to acknowledge quickly some of the UCW staff, the guest speakers, the students, and the clients that we worked with for helping me make this course better. I also wanted to thank Stukin, of course, for having me a second time. Hopefully next time would be in person. And all of you for being such an amazing audience. Even though I don't see you, I loved seeing your questions. It was very helpful, and I'm happy to take any other questions now. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, it was really great to see your presentation. I feel like I got to see it twice with the everything going on we did a practice run and everything, and it's been really great. Great having you here at ProfCon for your second year in a row. Is there any other questions anyone wanted to ask from the audience or come up?
I don't have any others than were already asked.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah. Thank you, Wahiba.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Well, it was good having you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Everyone enjoy the rest of your ProfCon.
Thanks so much, Rivers. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.